Hi, I'm Jeremy, the Zoo Nerd, coming to you live from my backyard in beautiful Los Angeles, California. How's everyone doing today? I hope you're well, happy, healthy, and having some fun. Today in Critter Chat, we're going to talk about two different species of shark. They often get confused with each other because they both go by the same name. Today we're talking about leopard sharks, but they're also sometimes called zebra sharks. And depending on what name you use, will depend a lot on where you are or where you're from and which shark you're talking about. So in the photos I posted earlier today on Facebook and Instagram, there are two sharks. So in the first picture, that is a shark that most scientists agree is called the leopard shark. The leopard shark's scientific name is Triachus semifasciata, which is a big long word, but that shark is native to the coastal areas of North America on the Pacific side. So from about middle of Oregon down through Baja, Mexico, and into the Gulf of California up in Mexico. So along Oregon, California, and parts of Mexico. The other shark in the second photo is sometimes called a leopard shark, depending on where you are and where you're living. Particularly in Australia and areas around there, they call it a leopard shark. But most scientists will agree and call that the zebra shark. Its scientific name is Stegostoma tigrineum. And again, very big long names. That's why they use Latin names. Those don't change. And each species in the world has a scientific name that is either Latin or Greek in origin, or some kind of Latinized or Greekized name. But that helps scientists throughout the world working on different efforts to conserve or research species so that they know for sure which species they're talking about. So although the common name leopard shark is used for both of these species, their scientific names are very different. So the shark that I'm going to refer to as the zebra shark, photo number 2, those sharks live in the Indian Ocean, along the eastern coast of Africa, around the Middle East, like the Red Sea, across like Pakistan, India, Southern Asia, Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Australia, all of those Pacific islands in the South Pacific, and up the mainland Asian coast through Vietnam, China, and up into the southern waters of Japan. Now, as part of this confusion comes from as to which name they go by, in that the sharks share several similarities. Specifically, they both kind of have spots and they both kind of have stripes. So the first shark, the leopard shark, the spots that are right on near the top of the animal are actually little stripes that connect from one side to another. Those are kind of called saddles or bars, but they look more like spots, but they are actually a little bit of a stripe. So that's how it sometimes gets confused. And the second shark, the one that's a little more tannish yellow in color, when those are born, they actually are a darker skin color with lighter bands that are kind of more like a zebra stripe that are striped throughout the body of the shark. And then as they get older, they get lighter in color, and the spots or the stripes kind of break apart and show the spots more than stripes. They are also both similar in kind of the depth of the water that they live in and how they eat. So they're both considered kind of bottom-dwelling sharks. They tend to hang out near the ocean floor, but they're both pretty much coastal species. So they live pretty close to the edge of continents, islands, or other land masses, sometimes reefs, or just barely submerged land, something called an atoll. But they live in those areas because those shallow areas are where their favorite foods live. They're both bottom feeders. You can tell by looking at the sharks. Their mouth is totally on the bottom side of their head, and it kind of opens to the bottom. And that helps them to eat their food, which is usually on the bottom in the sand or in the mud of the sea floor. So the things that they're trying to eat are things like clams, um, ocean worms, snails, crabs, shrimp, and small fish. And then the zebra shark will also eat sea urchins. With those sharks, they both use their very special skill that sharks have of being able to detect electricity. We talked about that 2 days ago in our general shark critter chat. That sense is called the ampullae de Lorenzini, right? It sounds like a pasta dish, but that is specialized pores on their head of their skin that help them to detect electrical currents given off by other animals, usually things like a heartbeat. Sometimes the breathing or the motion can cause those electrical currents, and the sharks can sense those. That helps them to find their prey if it's hiding in the sand or in the muddy bottom. With both the leopard shark and the zebra shark, their teeth that are in their mouth are highly specialized for crushing. That's very important if they get things like snails or clams that have kind of a harder outer shell. Those teeth are really good at kind of breaking down those shells, which they usually can spit out. And that way they are able to get the good part, the nutrition part of the prey that they're going after. Both are also, like I mentioned, spotted or striped, or a combination of both. So that sometimes gets them a little confused with each other. So now we're going to talk about them individually a little bit as species. So to start off, we'll talk with the one that's in picture one, the leopard shark. That shark is a little more silvery in color with dark colored spots, and then right at the top of its back, those are actually stripes that kind of go across its back. Those are sometimes called saddle bars. Leopard sharks, like I said, live along the coast of the United States from Oregon, California, and down into Mexico along the Baja coast. They're a medium-sized shark, so they're pretty small. They're considered an adult once they're about 3 feet in length, and they get maybe up into the 6-foot range, with some individuals having reached 7 feet in length. But typically they're more in that 3 to 6 foot range. They typically weigh about 40 pounds, so they're not super big, but they're still a medium-sized sharks. Most people think sharks are always huge, and a leopard shark is a really good example of a shark that's kind of middle of the size range, that they're really not all that big of an animal for the over 400 species of sharks. Which is true in most species of sharks. The females are typically bigger than the males. And like I said, these sharks like to hang out kind of near the ocean floor, although they will sometimes be a little higher in the water column. Most of their food sources are usually a little lower. So they like to hang out in bays and kind of the estuaries, the part where rivers and bays kind of drain into the ocean. And they also will hang out in the kelp forest, which is an important habitat right off the coast of California and Oregon and Mexico. They generally like temperate weathered ocean temperatures. So they kind of hang out in the water that is between like maybe 55 up to about low 70 degree water temperature. They are quite common in many areas right off the California coast. I know I have a couple friends who are divers who see them quite often just off of the coast in Orange County and in San Diego County here in California. And they are a very good possibility of the sharks that I saw in the waves just off the coast at Santa Monica that I talked about a couple days ago. These sharks are ovoviviparous. That's how their eggs develop. So we talked about this a little bit the other day. These are eggs that develop inside the mom. And so she creates eggs around the babies, and then those eggs stay in her for about a year, between 10 and 12 months. And then when they hatch inside her, and then they are born live. And with these pups, the leopard shark pups, they are about 7 inches long, so they're pretty small, and they are independent from the moment they're born. So there's no teaching or protecting or anything like that. Once they're born, they're on their own. She may give birth to anywhere from a handful of pups, like 5, 6, 7, all the way up into the 30s. So it can vary quite a bit. Probably older sharks giving birth to a few more pups once, because they kind of grow throughout their life. They're going to be a little bigger. They're going to be able to have a few more babies kind of in their prime of their life. With the leopard sharks, there are very strict regulations for fishing for them in California. I don't know about Mexico and Oregon. Most of their population is Californian based, so I would assume there's some regulation with them in those other places as well. But they have to be over 3 feet long to keep them if you're going to fish for them. I have heard that they are delicious. But they do contain high levels of mercury, which is a toxin that exists in the ocean, that is largely produced by chemicals that man uses on land that then get washed into the ocean and create problems for if you eat a fish that has high mercury counts. Mercury can slowly poison your body. So it's not recommended that you eat leopard sharks with any regular eating of them. They are also very well regulated in California, and so they are listed as a species of least concern, which is nice. That means their population is quite healthy and they are not endangered. This shark species does grow rather slow, with it taking them about 10 years to get from 7 inches up to about 3 feet in length, to where they can be sexually mature and start to have babies of their own. Although they are protected, they have at times been population threatened a bit by overfishing. That seems to have been curtailed by the stricter fishing limits, and they are sometimes also collected for the pet trade, which is illegal. It's illegal to keep these sharks if they are under 36 inches, including if you're keeping them alive and selling them to be pets. In 2007, a group of smugglers were actually busted in the San Francisco Bay Area who were collecting baby leopard sharks and selling them into the pet trade. And they were fined up to $1 million, which went back into habitat restoration efforts in the San Francisco Bay Area. Like I said, pollution is also a major threat for them, and as they eat things that live in the ocean floor and are very close to the coast of the mainland, they would be collecting a lot of those toxins and poisons that run off from people uses on the mainland. So that is a big problem with leopard sharks. Switching gears and moving over to talk about zebra sharks. The zebra sharks are in, again, that picture number 2 that I posted earlier today, with the adults being more kind of yellow or tan in color, with dark spots covering most of their body. These sharks can be a bit bigger than our friends the leopard sharks, with adults being up to 12 feet in length, with much of that length being their very, very large tail. The top fin portion of the tail is super elongated, and it moves a lot. It's very fluid as they swim, which gives them kind of an odd appearance as they move, but it really helps them to maneuver quickly into some really tight spaces. These sharks also live near the ocean floor or the sea floor, typically in sandy areas near coral reefs. So they also like water that's a bit warmer than the leopard sharks do. Typically living in tropical areas, like the northern area of Australia is a really great place to see them. Water temperatures where they live would be in the mid 60s up to the possibly high 70s. They typically like those kind of warmer tropical areas to live in. They also don't usually go too deep, with most of them staying within 100 feet of depth. That's common for both species. Neither of them go too deep. They have dark stripes when they are younger, and they look a little more like a zebra, which is why they're called a zebra shark, although as adults they look a little bit more like a leopard. They also have two little dangly bits hanging out of the side of their mouth that kind of give them kind of a catfish-like appearance. Those are called barbels. Those can actually detect movement and are a sense of touch reacted thing that helps them to find food on the ocean floor as well as their ampullae de Lorenzini, detecting electricity from some of their prey food. So they will eat, again, clams, crabs, snails, worms, shrimp, small fish, and they will also eat urchins. So they like to hang around coral reefs, and they have the ability to wiggle into little tight spaces and tight crevices in the coral reefs. With zebra sharks, they are one of the characteristics of kind of their family, and they're closely related sharks. They have something called a spiracle. In a close-up photo, you can see it just behind their eye on the side of their head. It acts as a little pump that can pump water over their gills. Because of that, they are able to stop swimming and they can rest. And they will often rest in kind of a calmer place during the daytime. And then during the evening or night is when they usually do most of their hunting around the coral reef, looking for some of those other critters hiding on the ocean floor. With zebra sharks, they are the type of shark that lays eggs. So when the female has babies developing in her, they are formed inside an egg, and then she expels the egg from her body. The eggs usually are laid in areas around coral or sometimes other underwater areas, and they have something called filament around them. It kind of looks like slimy kind of seaweed stuff, but it helps the egg to stay in place. So if this was coral instead of a tree, she would lay her egg kind of right here between these two branches, and then the filaments would help hold it in place, because it would need to stay in place for up to 6.5 months. The egg color is kind of a darker brown, sometimes a purplish color, sometimes a little greenish, and sometimes a little black. I have seen them. They're really cool. They sometimes call them mermaid purses, because it looks like what you would imagine if a mermaid had a purse. This is what it would look like. It's kind of this big and kind of shaped like a purse, with the filaments kind of looking like the handle of a purse. Really interesting things, these shark eggs. They're also translucent. That means that if you hold it up to a light, you can see through it. And at the aquarium where I worked, they had some of these shark eggs. And before I ever worked there, one time when I went and visited there, they had one with a baby developing inside, and they had a light shining behind it, and you could see the little wiggly baby shark inside the egg case. So it was pretty cool to see that. When the pups hatch, they are between 7 and 10 inches in length, so not much different than their leopard shark cousins, but they also are independent from birth. So mom doesn't hang out, she doesn't protect them at all. Once they are born, they are on their own. Baby zebra sharks typically go to a little bit deeper water and hide right in the crevices of the reef, looking for very small things to eat, like little shrimps and little fish, until they get bigger and can be out in the open a little bit more. With zebra sharks, they can live approximately between 20 and 30 years, with the ones living 30 years typically being more in an aquarium or a zoo setting. They are unfortunately endangered in many of the areas where they come from, particularly for overfishing. Because they are a shark that lives close to the coastline, they have been an easy target for many fishermen for many, many years, and that has depleted their population. They are eaten, so people eat the meat of the sharks, and then they also use them for shark fin soup, which we talked about in sharks in general 2 days ago, and that has been a big problem for them over the history of time. They're also sometimes caught for their liver, which has a lot of oil in it. That's something that all sharks kind of have. Their liver is a very big organ inside their body that has a lot of oil that helps them to be a little buoyant or to float a little bit. And that oil is highly sought after by people who use it in vitamins and sometimes some like skincare products. With the United States, they officially banned shark finning, which is a big problem for all shark species, in 2000. So the USA has been doing really good with that. And other countries have followed suit, particularly Canada, Mexico, New Zealand, and Australia. All have very strong laws against shark finning and regulations about overfishing for sharks. So that is a very good and important thing. The zebra sharks that live in Australia are very well protected, and that population is not as endangered as the zebra sharks who live in other areas along Africa and rest of mainland Asia and the South Pacific Islands. So those are all good things as well. As always, I like to talk a little bit about my experience working in a zoo and an aquarium field and how I have worked with these species. So during my time at the Aquarium of the Pacific, which is located in Long Beach, California, we did have both leopard sharks and zebra sharks on exhibit in the aquarium, and I would see both species pretty much every day that I worked. I never interacted directly with them because I worked in education. I did not take care of animals at the aquarium. Although I did take care of animals at the zoo, that's a different story for different times. But at the aquarium, I really enjoyed being able to see the sharks, and I would often see the leopard sharks, the silvery ones, get fed during our educational encounters and shows. There would be a diver in the water that would feed the sharks there, and they would usually feed them things like squid or fish. So it was really cool to be able to see both sharks. If you go to the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, I believe just their outdoor exhibits are open right now, but they do have zebra sharks outside in their shark lagoon, so you would be able to see those as well as several other shark species, which I may be able to talk about in another Critter Chat episode. Oh, you're asking how many zoos have I worked at? I actually did an episode about that at the very beginning of Critter Chat, so if you want, you can go back and learn more about that by watching earlier episodes. But I started my zookeeping career in 2006 at Utah's Hogle Zoo as a volunteer keeper assistant. I also worked at the Phoenix Zoo in Phoenix, Arizona, doing education and special events. I worked there for 7 years. And I was at the Los Angeles Zoo for about 4 years officially as a paid employee, and another 1.5 years as a volunteer prior to that, where I was eventually a zookeeper at the end of my time there, taking care of hoofed animals. And then I went to work at the Aquarium of the Pacific after that, where I worked in education. So short answer, 3 zoos, 1 aquarium. That is what I have to share with you about sharks today. I'll be posting more information up on the Facebook page and also some in the Instagram stories, so check that out later today. Oh, did I go to college and what did I major in? Yes, I did go to college. I have a bachelor's degree. My degree is actually in communication, so it is not super related to taking care of animals. That's always kind of been more my hobby and my other interest. Although I do have a Bachelor of Science degree, so I did take many science classes in college. I also learned a lot on the job, and during my time at Utah's Hogle Zoo, I worked as a volunteer for 6 months learning how to take care of animals and learning more about animals. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, I also had to take a course from them to learn how to be a zookeeper, to specifically take care of the animals there. And I was a volunteer there for another 1.5 years before I was hired. As always, feel free to like, share, follow, and subscribe to any of my content across ZooNerd at Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and on my website at jeremythezoonerd.com. Oh, do I have any pets? Yes, I have 2 dogs. You can see them wandering around behind me in many of the videos. Today it's really hot, so they are outside with me right now. They are laying down in the shade under my patio, waiting to go back in. So they don't like it when it gets too hot, although they enjoy coming outside when they can. Today is also World Elephant Day. I considered possibly doing Critter Chat on elephants because of that, but I already did an elephant Critter Chat. It was one of the very first ones I did. It's episode number 5. So if you want to learn more about elephants, you can check on my YouTube channel or on my website and watch the Critter Chat about elephants that I did way back in March when I first started Zoo Nerd. I will be posting some information in the Instagram stories on Zoo Nerd about World Elephant Day and sharing content from different zoos and other conservation organizations about elephants to celebrate World Elephant Day. I do love elephants, and I can't let it pass without doing something for them. But like I said, I'll be posting more information about sharks as well. So stay tuned to the Facebook page for information about sharks and the Instagram stories for information about elephants. Until next time, be happy, be healthy, have fun, take care. Bye.